we are here because of the 4As, so that stands for the American Association of Advertising Agencies. I know, try to say that 5 times fast. So they are sponsoring this event, and every fall they run an institute for the New England-based advertising agencies where everyone sends their top talent over a course of 3 months. And actually, I was lucky enough a few years ago to participate in the institute. And it's a really, really life-changing experience where you get to know a lot of rising stars in the area and get to work on a client where you really dive deep and solve their business problems and marketing problems and end up actually pitching them as a new client in the end. So it seemed natural when Barb came to me this year saying that we wanted to use a startup, a local startup, for the institute, that we would naturally do a pitch competition, right? Pivoting real quick just to Barb, who's going to come up and actually talk to us a little about the innovation in advertising. Barb is actually the chairman of the New England 4As chapter, and she's also the president of Digitas Boston and Detroit, where she helps lead our growth as an agency. So I'm pleased to introduce Barb Goose up to the stage to talk about advertising and innovation.
Thank you, Tommy, as well to the rest of the team that has organized this event. We're thrilled to see the room full of folks. I know I speak on behalf of the other judges, which some are over here and some are over here. Don't be, worried that there are more judges than attendees, but people actually from the 4As that have participated either on the board or as mentors of the Institute program, or as people, as Tommy said, who have gone through the program, are so passionate about it that they're so excited to participate in identifying who will be that next case study. So thank you very much. Before we jump in, and I feel like I'm kind of like the appetizer before dinner, so hopefully you're hungry, just a short appetizer, and then we'll get to the main event. But by a show of hands, how many people here are associated in some way with a startup? This half, it's almost like the bride and the groom. This half of the room, all right, this half of the room is a startup. How many people with agencies? Okay. How many people who'd like to work for a startup or an agency? No, I'm just kidding. Definitely a good mix, and I'm glad to see it because I'll kick us off by talking a little bit about what I think agencies can learn from startups. So we'll see if you guys all agree. But we actually have 4 amazing startups that we're going to hear more about later today. They're each going to come up and share their stories. But these have been already selected by over 45 submissions. No, it's probably like even more than that since I recently checked. And we've had literally thousands and thousands of people participating in online voting, and there'll be more to come in a participation factor today. But these are 4 amazing companies in 4 very, very different categories. And I couldn't be more excited to know that one of them is going to be our next case study. So many of us live in Boston, live around the area, live in Cambridge. I tried to find a picture that had both Cambridge and Boston because I feel like to fully represent the technology and innovation of the Boston metro area, you should show both sides of the river. So pretend you can see Cambridge. We'll give certainly kudos to folks there, but there's just amazing stuff going on, as you guys know. In the technology review, Boston was one of the world's top 5 innovation clusters that was named in recent years, and we were named and recognized because of the strong culture of entrepreneurship. And in addition to that, more recently, I had to find various ways to get Fenway and the Red Sox into this, even though I do support both Boston and Detroit. I root for the Red Sox, just to make that clear. Probably backed by Fenway's boost this year, startups are just on the move, right? And they're not only in the Innovation District, they're not only in Cambridge, they're everywhere around us. There's over 700 startups. There's almost $3 billion invested in those startups. That's a huge number. There's a lot going on. And in fact, another statistic when I heard from or read from Flybridge more recently, they said Massachusetts is number 2 behind California, ahead of New York. So I thought that was pretty cool. Ahead of New York. Ready? Anyone? Okay. So, what do advertising agencies have to learn from startups? So, advertising agency on the left, startup on the right. That's at least one of the startups that I participated in along my journey. But actually, we believe that we're here because we believe that the startup scene has so much to offer to the ad community. You know, historically, there hasn't been a bridge. I've been at Digitas for over 14 years. Previous to that, I worked at a couple startups. But like the two didn't really spend a lot of time together until recently. And I think things are changing because we're finding more synergies. Things are changing faster. We need to bring more relevant solutions to our clients. And there is a lot that we can learn. I mentioned I worked at 2 startups. I've also had the opportunity to be part of the Digitas LBI Startup Network and worked with lots of entrepreneurs. You know, I actually think that there are 3 really big things that we can take away from the startup culture. So let's see if you guys agree. The first one is just about embracing change, right? Like the founder of any startup, right? So any founders? They're gonna be shy or no, not so shy, okay. The founders are anticipating a change in the marketplace. They think that they know something that other people don't know, right? And it's all about filling that need. You know, thank goodness that we're embracing change. You know, when I think back over the course of my career, I was thinking about one of the things that changed the most, and you think about where we are with phones. I'll come back to phones a little bit later on. But this attitude that startups bring, you know, this appetite for what's next, is just amazing, and I think that's what allows startups to be successful. It's like they're not going to be told no. So they take on those risks, and they're quite successful in many cases. And if not, they just move on to the next opportunity. You know, 10 years ago, there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, and you know, there was no need for social marketers at agencies. That job just didn't exist. But today, more than 50% of Twitter users expect to get some level of customer service response from a brand in 2 hours or less, right? Like, and all of us, we expect that too, and we're trying to help our brands do that. I think learning more about how startups solve problems and learn to respond will help us get there faster. 10 years ago, we were starting to see that proliferation of smartphones in the tech community. Today, a majority of Americans own them. And if you think about it, right, 74% of mobile users will flat out abandon a site on their phone if it takes 5 seconds to load. Okay, so I have gone into clients and I say to them, okay, ready? I'm gonna load your site. And I press it, and we wait a while. I usually put a counter next to that. And honestly, like, no one's gonna wait. And so you have to figure out how to make your technology work, how to make your technology work even faster. Ours is a space that's always looking forward, and always looking forward to what's next. I thought back as Tommy said, well, talk about, you know, the relevancy of startups and talk about what we can learn from them. One of the first companies I worked for after business school was a startup. And it was all about campaign management. And they had a really good tool. And we had a lot of clients. And it was the company that did really well, and we went public, and we were on the NASDAQ, right? We were like one of those companies. So you can, this is like the 90s. So I know, this is like a history lesson. But, you know, we went public, and the stock went up over 100, right? Quickly. And it was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, we're done. And then, I have to say, like, even more quickly, it came back down, and it was a penny stock. And guess what they didn't do? They didn't anticipate change. They didn't embrace change. It's no secret. They were here and they were around. Of course, those people didn't then give up. But guess what these people didn't predict? The internet. So they had a perfect solution that worked, you know, on, you know, things that were not connected. Obviously, not the right answer. So, like I said, those people have gone on, hopefully, and they have done other great things. But it was a big lesson. You can't get lost in it. All right, number 2, living in beta. Everyone talks about this. I think we're all living it more and more, but this is a lesson that we can learn from startups. Startups just, like, let's try it, you know? Like, it's the first trial. Let's get people using it. Let's see what they say. more often traditional brands and agencies that work with those traditional brands, it doesn't happen that fast. They can't get them to just try things. But they're losing out if in fact you don't get someone to try things. I love this quote. It's from Edison, and he said, "I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that don't work." And so when I think about that, I think that's all about living in beta and that continual sense of trying and getting things to work and making things happen. And it's that willingness to test things in real time and get continual improvement. So we should all be as lucky as Edison with what comes out of tonight. I'm sure we all have many stories about companies that live in beta. You don't always have to be a small company to live in beta. So I'm going to make the case that I think Apple is living in beta today. Does anyone have one of the 5 products yet, 5S? Okay, so good. Careful. I'll tell you a story. And you can decide whether you want to be on the cutting edge. Every phone they've ever came out with, I've always just gotten it like right away. It just is what I've done so that I could experience it and talk about it and understand it as a consumer, but talk about it to my clients as well. So of course I had the 5S, and last weekend the whole thing shut down. I went to use it and it went black. I'm telling you, black. There was no little apple coming back. There was briefly a blue screen, which I found strangely optimistic. And then there was nothing. And then I was sad. I was missing the blue screen. But, I had no phone. And, it's interesting. When I reflected upon it, I was obviously disappointed. I was frustrated with the experience, to say the least. I've gone back to my 4, so I'm going to wait a little while longer. I might encourage some of you to do the same. But I still like Apple. And I think that there's a lot of trust in certain brands that come with a series of enough good experiences that let you overcome a bad one. So I'll wait a little longer. You guys will tell me what kind of experiences you have with your phones. So bringing it back to agencies, with marketing and technology, you just can't create something or finalize a process and then expect to be done. We're never really done, and our industry is always evolving. And startups help us to evolve with it. The third and last thing that I think is really similar, or that actually agencies can learn from startups, is the notion of working in small teams. And I know a lot of us, because we all work for different agencies and we share stories, we know how critical that is. And you guys know that too, no matter where you're working, right? If you walk into a room and have 20 people and you're trying to make a decision, it doesn't go so fast. Many of our clients, how many clients are in the room? Not mine in general, but any brands in the room? All right, I won't ask where you're from. But sometimes, just occasionally, when I walk into a client, there's 30 people in the room and we're there to make a decision. And that's really hard. So it's that notion of how do you move fast? How do you get a small group together to drive innovation and drive creation to make it go really fast? So with that in mind, I want to wish each of the 4 companies that are competing today the best of luck, because we're going to have a winner in the room by the end of the session. And I speak on behalf of myself and the other judges, wherever they are, when I say that we're excited to learn from you and to work with you. And I know that together, we're going to have even more winning opportunities in Boston. Go Sox. Okay, next up, Emily Powers from Hill Holiday is going to come up and tell us a little bit more about the format of the session.
Thanks, Barb. And thank you all again for joining us today for the first ever Boston Future 4 competition. In just a few minutes, you'll hear from our 4 finalists. They're all innovative startups from the Boston area. They'll share each of their unique offerings, and they'll talk about how they feel advertising would help them grow, reach their full potential, and impact our culture and society. At the end of each presentation, we'll also conduct a short Q&A session where we'll solicit questions from both the judging panel and the audience. And as for our judges, we're lucky to have some of the area's senior senior members of the advertising industry. Joining Barb on the judging panel today are Scott Rabchnik, who's EVP Group Account Director at Hill Holiday, Maya Dennis, EVP Chief Client Officer at Allen & Gerritsen, David Swabe, SVP Agency Communications and Business Development at Mullen, and John Newton, who is the director of the 4A's Institute. We're also honored to have 3 former 4A's mentors with us as part of the judging panel. We have Heather Bird and Matt Edwards from Hill Holiday, and Adam Chardoff from Havas Media. Not only have they participated in the 4A's Institute, but they've mentored teams through it, so their perspective will be particularly valuable to today's session. To further evaluate our finalists, some of you may know that we opened polling for a week prior to the event online so that fans of these young and growing companies could show their support and cast their vote. And finally, following all of the presentations, you all will have a chance to impact the vote because we'll open it up to live text voting. With that, we want to get right to the finalists, the first of which plays in a category that is on the tip of everyone's tongue these days, which is healthcare. Now, more than ever, we all know it's important to streamline and make more modern and efficient healthcare practices. However, there are many practices in the industry that are still inefficient and outdated. They cost patients money and can compromise their health. So, dermatology is one of them. In Boston, we've recently learned, it can take up to 54 days to get a dermatologist appointment. However, a melanoma can metastasize in under a month. We need to fix it, and the team from 3Derm is here to tell you how they plan to do that. They've developed new technology to improve access to and frequency of skin imaging and connecting that data between patients and dermatologists in a more efficient way. Co-founders Liz Asai and Elliot Swart are going to tell you 3Derm's story, including how they've begun to influence the industry and how they see themselves changing the world of dermatology. So with that, Liz and Elliot.
Dermatology is broken. Okay. Dermatology is broken. Melanoma is the fastest acting, deadliest skin cancer out there, and it's on the rise. And our only defense is early detection. So this means that wait times are everything. In a recent study conducted in the UK, they showed that melanoma patients who were treated within 14 days had a survival rate of 82%. But after 22 days, only 62% of melanoma patients survived. In the US, our average wait time is 38 days. Dermatology is broken. But what stands behind this number is that there are 30,000 patients for every 1 dermatologist. So this means that offices are overbooked and wait times are really long. But because of increases in different skin cancer awareness, every patient who walks into a dermatology office thinks that they have skin cancer. And it's hard to blame the patients because, well, can you tell which of these is skin cancer? To be honest, neither can we. But a trained dermatologist can, especially when we give them one of our 3D clinical quality images. And when that happens, it takes them about 10 seconds. We're at 3Derm, and we're making teledermatology practical like never before. As engineers at Yale, we set out to design a system that would allow any patient to take a clinical quality image of their skin and send it to a dermatologist for review. 2 years later, it's developed into the most exciting referral tool needed on the market today.
So what exactly is our system? Now first we have our handheld imager. Now this guy is basically a photo booth for moles. Now as well as incorporating all the dermatological imaging standards, it also takes photos in stereoscopic 3D. Now this is unprecedented in the field of teledermatology and gives dermatologists access to a level of depth and detail that they've never had before. So this is pretty cool by itself, but we're more than just our hardware. We've also built a software platform in the Amazon cloud that allows scans to be taken from anywhere and viewed from anywhere. So, how might this work? Patient notices something on their skin and walks into their local CVS or Walgreens instead of waiting 38 days to get an appointment. They talk to the technician who inputs some basic information about their lesion, a description, where it is, and presses the scan button. They position it on the skin, press a button, and within a few short seconds, the image is uploaded directly to our cloud servers. From here, it's sent on to our off-site dermatologists. Now, this is actually what they see in 2D and stereoscopic 3D. Now, with this information, a dermatologist can determine who needs to be seen urgently and who doesn't need to come in at all. So, where are we now? We've tested this device on patients, we've won a lot of contests, we've built a support network of industry experts and mentors, and we even convinced the government to give us money.
To date, we've won over $400,000 in funding, and after our recent PR campaign, we've amassed almost 76 followers on Twitter. So clearly we can use a lot of help here. And in fact, that brings us to our main challenge, which is that nobody knows about us yet. Our targets range from CVS and Walgreens all the way down to dermatologists and other physicians. It's what makes our marketing challenge so exciting. But we can't forget that we must also target our end user, which would be patients. And unlike other medical device or pharmaceutical companies, we can't simply rely on these patients to ask their doctor about 3Derm, because, well, it'll take them about 38 days to see that doctor. But we can't just rely on these simple methods. We need to get more creative than that. And these patients are really anyone who's ever had a concern about their skin, basically everyone. We can't just scare them about skin cancer. We have to convince them to take an active role in their healthcare. And to that extent, we want to know what would this look like? How do we talk to them? Where would we reach them? What should we put on these subway ads? What do we post on the wall outside a CVS Minute Clinic? What is Pinterest? What should we write on our survey questionnaire or talk about during our focus panels? What are we not thinking about right now that is going to be crucial to obtaining customers down the line? We need to answer these questions, and for that, we're going to need help. This is a tremendous opportunity for us, and we are so excited at the prospect of working with Boston's best minds to implement these types of ideas. We're 3Derm, and we've invented something new, which is something that terrifies our investors, but we find really exciting and presents a really interesting marketing challenge. We're trying to fundamentally change how people think about dermatology and healthcare, and we'd like your help to do that. Thanks.
Are there any questions from the judging panel? We'll start with you all. No? We have a question in the audience.
I'm just wondering if one of your on-site or off-site dermatologists looked at an image that in fact turned out to be melanoma, but in fact gave a negative reading. What are the liability issues for, you mentioned investors being scared. That comes to mind for me.
There's only one mic, so.
Yeah, so liability is definitely something that we have to address, and for us, because we know it's going to be such a big issue, we're trying to kind of hit it hard at the beginning, where we have all the malpractice insurance to cover the dermatologist who's doing the reading, and then also knowing that dermatologists carry a level of liability in any reading when they see a patient in person, say, and we're asking those dermatologists to be that much extra careful when they're looking at an image remotely, which actually happens naturally because they're just that much more cautious since they're not seeing the patient in person.
And we are conducting extensive pilot studies to determine that dermatologists can, in fact, be just as accurate with our device as they are in person, because we wouldn't want to endanger the patients.
I guess I have two questions for you. It's an awesome presentation and great idea. The first question is, if it takes 38 days for me to get an appointment and see my dermatologist, when does that dermatologist have time to look at these random photos coming in? One. And then two, who pays for this? Is this something that goes through insurance, or is this something that CVS or Walgreens pays for? Or does
I'll address the reimbursable question. So telemedicine is something that is definitely becoming more and more reimbursable, but we know that right now this is a service that we probably want to offer as a for-fee service to do the reading, and then slowly build in reimbursement as we go along. And we're going to roll that out by going to different types of referral sites, such as high-end health spas or CVS Minute Clinics that work on models that don't require reimbursements. And once we get the reimbursements, then we can go anywhere. We could be in a general practitioner's office because all the codes will be the same.
I mean, and in a broader sense, we do hope that telemedicine is going to catch on. Like California already mandates some reimbursement of telemedicine codes, and more states are doing the same because net, a 5-minute inspection remotely is way more efficient than a 20-minute in-person inspection, and we really hope to benefit by making the healthcare system more efficient, and as the laws get reformed.
On the first question, so what's interesting about dermatology is that they normally refer a couple spots in their schedule each day for patients who will be emergencies. So maybe they have a friend who's a general practitioner that they know when they say this is melanoma, it's melanoma. So they'll put patients into those spots. But the thing is, if you're just the average person calling in and you say, I think I have skin cancer, they're going to say, so does everyone else who just called in today. That's why it's 38 days. But we've been asking dermatologists, what would it take to convince you to use up one of those emergency spots if you got a fax today? And that's how we built our auto-generated PDFs, so that when our dermatologist, who's an accredited director of the University of Miami telemedicine program, says this is melanoma, everyone's going to believe her and say, yes, they're going to get it tomorrow.
Okay, and we're going to move on to the next finalists, and Devin Dawson.
Thanks. That was very awesome. So we're going to totally shift gears here. So one of our big challenges in advertising is that oftentimes it feels like everything's been done, right? There's nothing new, there's nothing interesting. And it's kind of right sometimes. But it's especially true when it comes to music. So what we've noticed with music is everything gets more and more digital, right? Everything's going digital. But what happens sometimes in marketing is when everything goes one way, something springs up over here that you didn't expect. So there's been a huge shift away from digital in music, and a lot of people are now going analog, and truly going analog because they're buying records, vinyls. Some of you have probably no idea what that even is. So that's where an opportunity lied for our next startup. And what they, this is a team of audiophiles who love music, love analog sounds, and they wanted to reinvent something that's old, which is the turntable. They looked at something that felt outdated, that felt, like, oh, that existed for so long, you can't make improvements on it. And they said, wait, no, you can make improvements on this. So I'm going to have Bob Herzig and Peter Maltzing come up and talk about it. So this is U-Turn Audio, and they're going to talk about how they're hoping to change music, but also the way people perceive music.
So good afternoon. We are U-Turn Audio, and our product is the Orbit Turntable. So we're a company founded by music lovers, and we're driven to improve the relationship that music fans have with their music collections. And as vinyl lovers, we were thrilled when we started noticing that vinyl records are coming back in a huge way. Past 5 years, sales have consistently grown, and it's kind of a phenomenon at this point. And in this, we saw an opportunity to create a turntable product that appeals to this new market. In the more long-term goals here, we decided that this would be a good approach to take to other audio products in the future, that create high-quality audio products that are still attainable and accessible. So our first step was to conceive of a design, develop it, and then we took it to Kickstarter in December of last year. And in our 35-day campaign, we sold just about 1,000 units and raised nearly $250,000. And so since then, we have been preparing our design for mass production, in addition to securing a manufacturing space, organizing a supply chain, and all the things that go in from taking a product from a prototype to a full-scale production product. And it was all done in about 6 months. And so now we're building turntables every day and shipping them every day to our backers. And since June, we've been accepting more orders through our website, just to ensure that we can keep the production of our turntable going after we fulfill our Kickstarter awards.
So who are these people buying records all of a sudden? This is a photo from the 10th Annual Record Store Day, an annual event celebrating the role of record stores in their community. And these are young adults, students, young professionals, grew up in a world of earbuds and laptop speakers and pirated MP3s, and they're turning to vinyl as a way to better connect with and better experience the music they love. So we identified the key needs of this market, the primary one being a price point. Anytime you're dealing with students and young professionals, you're dealing with people on a budget. But closely followed by price is playback quality. People who are going out of their way to buy and collect records and get the whole experience are going to want to pay off at the point of actually listening to that music. So playback quality is a huge key. Another thing people are going to look for is ease of use. Most expensive turntables actually can have a pretty complicated and delicate setup process. We mimicked all those designs. We mimicked a lot of their design aspects, but went for a very easy setup out of the box. Also in this ever-needy generation, people like to pick and choose and get their purchase exactly the way they want it. But most entry-level turntables come in one model, can't be upgraded, can't be changed at all. We're already offering 3 colors, a choice of platter material, upgradable cartridge, and we're looking to expand on all these options moving forward to have kind of a build-your-own turntable store. And a final point of appeal for these users is just the overall aesthetic. Many beginner turntables are built from plastic, poor construction, but we know that an audio setup is kind of a lifestyle choice, something that people want to display proudly, and the Orbit was made with appearance in mind and designed to be displayed.
So what makes U-Turn Audio different than the other turntable manufacturers out there, and in addition to that, all the audio companies out there? Well, number one, we're focusing on a very high quality to cost ratio. Before this Orbit turntable, you had 2 choices if you're going to buy one. You could get an entry-level plastic feature-heavy turntable from Best Buy and ruin your records, or you could take $300 or $400 to a hi-fi shop and spend a lot of money on an entry-level audiophile turntable. We decided to take a different approach and fill this gap by offering our turntable directly from our website at a price point that was attainable for this new market. And this is completely different than what a lot of audio companies do, who typically rely on a distribution network and retailers to do a lot of their marketing for them, where for us, we're taking on that responsibility to reach our consumers and market to them and get them to buy our products. So this can only be done effectively by creating a good relationship with our consumers, which is something, again, a lot of other audio companies try to just ignore completely. We're already one of the largest social followings of a turntable company. We have an Instagram and Twitter Twitter accounts that are actively engaging with our customers, and we create online tutorials and videos on our website so that people who aren't familiar with the products can learn about it and have an easy time setting it up. So marketing is extremely important for our company. This is because, again, we're relying on our direct sales to sell our product, but we're also very much a bootstrapped company. So we really don't have any marketing budget. So it's critically important that we have a powerful marketing strategy and messaging that clearly connects with our consumers. And we've been very successful so far, relying on word of mouth of the Orbit. But we know that in order to reach beyond our initial group of early adopters, we do need that effective messaging, and in addition to a great product. So thank you for having us, and we're U-Turn Audio.
So judges, any immediate questions you guys have?
At this point, do you have a sense of the audience size potential? So you talk about students and young professionals, but also audiophiles within that.
Right. So we've gotten a sense of the total market size just by essentially investigating other record turntable manufacturers. But we also know that they're really only appealing to the audiophile section, where we're trying to break out of that and trying to capture some of that high-end audio market, but in addition to that, reach the more mainstream consumer at the same time. And that's kind of it's very much a balancing act, because you have the turntables that appeal directly to the mainstream consumers, but they're really not well received. And then you have the turntables that appeal to the high-end consumers, and they're just too expensive. So we're really just trying to straddle the line, and in the end, it's difficult to come up with an actual number of how many units we could sell.
One more question here.
So you guys describe yourself as a company that was founded by music lovers, so we have somewhat of a sense of company culture. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what is the culture like inside the company? And what's your tolerance for creative risk-taking? Like, if you end up winning this thing and getting an agency or a bunch of agencies working on your behalf, do you want them to go nuts creatively?
So we started a company out of my mom's basement and took it to Kickstarter. And I think that should show that our company culture is very accepting of new ideas. A good example of our company culture is we play records nonstop from beginning of work to the end. And we are always thinking of new ways to improve things in the way that if there's a good idea, it's just like, bam, like, put it in motion right now. We like to think that a lot of the more established turntable companies out there don't have the flexibility that we have. And one example of that is we were approached by a record label to do a custom turntable for I think it was the Flaming Lips. And they had approached other turntable companies who said, no, we can't do this. And we were like, oh, of course, let's do it. So we like to think that our flexibility and agility is one of the biggest advantages we have right now.
Awesome. So thanks, everybody. That was U-Turn Audio. We're going to switch gears again. Thank you.
Just quick show of hands, how many people since they walked in the room have used social media? Okay, everyone. And how many people at one time or another have felt a bit overwhelmed by the amount of social channels that they sort of have to manage and all the communication and noise that comes out of those things? Yeah, me too. So our last startup, the founders of Cloze, are aiming to solve this problem in a very simple way. Their product aims to take all of your social channels and all your social platforms and communication channels and aggregate them into one. But this isn't just a story of technology. You're going to hear that it's really a story about the end user and their needs, because Cloze really does put their users at the center of their product, or more specifically, who they care about. So I'd like to introduce you guys to Dan and Alex, or just Dan, sorry. And he'll walk you through Cloze, their plans to revolutionize social media by simply bringing it all together.
So, thank you, everyone. It's good to see people checking social media in here. I think that's probably part of your jobs, I would guess. My co-founder and I, we had been executives in our previous companies, and we faced the same problem many of you face, just totally and completely overwhelmed by information. In fact, if you look at the average social feed that people have, there's a novel a day worth of social media goes through your feed. That, I don't know, I don't have time to read another novel. I don't know about you guys, but I don't have time to read an extra novel every single day. And most people's reaction to this, and probably outside the audience that we're talking here, is actually a very simple one. They turn it off. Most people just unplug from social media. Maybe they look at the 20 most recent posts, 1% of their feed, but for the most part, they just turn it off and ignore it. It's better to ignore it than feel like a failure that you can't get through what's there. And so, facing this ourselves, we felt there's got to be something better than these two extremes of either being totally and completely overloaded or turning it off. And what came to us as we looked at that was the realization that, if someone is only going to look at 1% of their social feed, the most useless 1% to look at is actually what's happening right now. What we do in Cloze is we help focus people not on the 1% that happened right now, but on the 1% that's most important to them. So we analyze and figure out who's most important, what's most important, and bring that to the surface for people. So in a nutshell, that's Cloze. It's an app that figures out who's most important to you and finds the people and posts that matter, cuts out the noise of everything else. And so that's what we've built with Cloze. We launched in February. We've been in the Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine during our launch. We have about 150,000 users now, and we're on iPhones, iPads, Android, and on the web. So we're at the stage in our company now where we actually need to become a real company. We need to make some money. And it's actually hard to make money in the end user tool space, but we've seen a really interesting pattern in our user base. It's almost segmented in a number of different ways. There's the average person we talk about just turns off, but you folks, many of you in the room, you actually can't turn social media off. It's part of your job. You constantly have to be keeping an eye on it. You have to see what's going on all the time. And so, that's part of the nature of marketing. And whether it's, you've got TweetDeck sitting off to the side, watching that stream go by, or using a high-end tool like Radian 6 or others, you constantly have to keep on top of social media. And we saw that stat right at the beginning that was the 50% of customers want to interact with brands. But I'm going to challenge that for a moment. So it was a great lead-in, I thought. As a customer, so put yourself in the shoes of an end user right now for a moment. Would you rather interact with a nameless, faceless brand account or with a real, honest-to-God, live person who knows what they're talking about at the company? Most people actually want to talk to a person. And so, marketing has tended to focus and build all their tools around feeding the brand accounts, and so on. But you think about it as a marketer, the employees in your company, the end users, the people who are the executives in a company, they are your most powerful weapon on social media if you can harness them. But there's a problem. Most of them are these people. They turn off social media because they already have a day job. They don't have time to be going through their social media feeds. And so how do you bridge this gap? How do you turn those employees into social media weapons for your company? How do you turn them into social media experts? This is where we think Cloze fits in for the business use case as well. It fits in a spot between the high-end tools that marketers typically use, whether it's the Radian 6s or the Hootsuites, and the actual average employee of a company. The typical marketer, and many of you in this room are already doing this. You've got clipping services. Marketers are constantly finding interesting, useful, relevant content. But getting that out to employees is actually pretty hard. Maybe it's a newsletter that gets sent out daily or weekly. With Cloze, once you find something, you can immediately distribute it to all of your employees as it happens. So they can see right on the spot, here's something that's interesting. They can get engaged in that conversation as it happens. Because a social media conversation that happened 6 hours ago, it's dead. There's no reason to try and get someone engaged in it. You need people engaged in it as it happens. And these aren't necessarily sophisticated users. They're not people that would actually understand a tool like Hootsuite. They need something that's really simple, and that's what we give them with Cloze. We've also found with our users a really important point. The average employee does not want to give control of their social media accounts to their company. They want to speak with their own voice. They've got private, sensitive information in their social feeds. They will not give their own account to their company. So you need a way to be able to bridge that gap again and get information fed to the employee, but let them speak with their own voice through their own accounts and keep a level of control. And we offer that with Cloze. I've been a little busy up here today, right? I haven't had time to look at social media. I'm talking to you guys, so But Alex over there, Alex is spending a little bit of time. I'm going to show you a bit of Cloze here. Alex has actually been, he's the guy keeping on top of it for us. And looks like we actually have a conversation on something Alex found on social media going on here. So this, by the way, never came across my feed whatsoever. I'd never seen this article about the importance of building community of brand advocates. But Alex found it, shared it with our team. There was a conversation. And now, even though I never was involved in this, I could directly jump into this conversation. I can reshare it, or, for example, I can end up reposting it or tweeting it. So let me reshare that, send it back out, and now I'm involved in this conversation. It's actually, if you check my LinkedIn feed, if you're connected, you'd see that right out there. I didn't have to find this myself, spend all the time for it, but I'm able to engage in social media. So we think with Cloze, we can build a win-win for people. For marketers, they get the ability to turn any employee in the company into a real strong brand advocate. But the individual gets the ability to build their own personal brand on social media without all the work and effort of finding all the content and information themselves. And that's really what we're trying to do with Cloze, is bridge that world of the professional users of social media to the average person, to make companies turn anyone into a social media expert. So how can we use your help? A couple of interesting things here. We're obviously moving into a B2B space, needing to make money there. But fundamentally, the things we stand for are almost the antithesis of every B2B company out there. We stand for less, not more. We stand for simplicity, not complexity. You could go on to see the differences between the way B2B companies behave and what we're trying to do. We're about cutting the noise, not adding stuff to your plate. And so it's a crowded marketplace we're trying to go into. We need to figure out a way to break out from that. But at the same time, we don't want to sacrifice what our users value and what we value, those points of simplicity and the clarity and the cutting of noise for people. So we need to maintain that aspect of what's essentially important to us and our users, while still selling in a market that's full of spec sheets and data sheets and so on. So that's the challenge I put to all of you in the room around that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Hope everyone had a good time.
Thank you.